Yeah, with where looking is. Yeah. You can see also.
There we go. Get it out there.
There's some commercials on the TV anymore. Oh, that's just now. Wow, there's some commercials on the TV while you're waiting. Okay. You can call me and go over. All right. Pledge allegiance to the flag. States to the republic, which stands one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Make a motion on the minutes of October 22nd. All in favor? That's the items, department heads. We don't see. Tax collector treasurer. Boy.
Today we finished phase one of our new website. I saw her from Trio, and Trio is setting up a schedule to get the upgrade moving forward. That's basically all I really have. So the tax payments will be coming in. No.
Okay,
So,
in regards to the treasurer, I make a motion. That's to remove Wanda Bartlett from the TD and Norway savings accounts. And add Lynn Boyle as the treasurer to those accounts. Back to the meeting. Second. All in favor? ACO.
I've taken spray cats myself and that's part of it.
Like it always.
Thank you.
Fire chief, what you got?
Busy couple of weeks, we did a ventilation fire on the woods fire last weekend. Apologize, I'm going to down in the area. Friday night at 5 o'clock, we were down by Den's house. Fire in the woods fire, we had a UTV and 8 people, and then Saturday morning, we get back and pop it up. We got out of that. We did mutual aid and soccer rescue, we then did lifeline helicopter at the Tangos. Then we had a reported fire on the hiking trail. Where I go? I like that sort of the snake. Did it? But there was no fire. We had trees down on Shepherd River Road and blood sailed from behind winds. We found out from an explosion down on Spring Street, Bay Street, which turned out to be Tannerite. I go back to the Tannerite. My stuff is loud. And we did pull better calls. We had a pump tested last Wednesday, passed. Took a river shake. Weeks ago, I had the Girl Scouts over in the afternoon, during their finish training with 911 that, had 8 girls over. Fire station, increasing fire safety stuff. Had a good time. And reminder, the clocks turn back. Saturday, so place your batteries in your smoke detectors and small. And one other thing is that this meeting Thursday night. Last Thursday night, and there's some changes, I know that I have already dealt with this, but now when they have an issue with the road. And I go to an assessment, they're gonna wanna see if the road was maintained, checked, gated, and have documentation that is maintained. Because if we don't show documentation, we may not have to pay, they refuse it because they say we're being neglected. We ran into that, remember Lynn on the last one, they started looking at that, from that level. Yeah, so now they're mandating it, that has to be done. Cool. All roads have to be looked at, all have to be checked, all this has to be documented. That's where that why I take care of another for that. That's not good, it is. Little vehicle.
Health officer.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder, coming up in November 12th, immediately preceding the selectmen's meeting, there will be a meeting of the recently reformed safety committee. It will be at 4:30 in the afternoon. And a week after that, again on a Tuesday, starting in the morning and probably running most of the day. I believe the town office is already posted that it will close that morning. We have an instructor coming down from Augusta to do several hours of instruction for the various departments in town on safety works. And I also took the liberty to invite folks from Freiburg who may be needing that same class. That there's probably going to be a chair or two that they can occupy. And I think we've even got a hold of Denmark as well on that. That's it. Thank you.
Well, safety building committee.
Not a whole lot has changed. We're still going through, we're creating kind of we're calling them a needs and wants list. Things that we're looking for in the building and or options that we might want, but we may not be able to afford. We're going on a fire station tour next week. Some of us, still not sure who. One of the stations is Brewer. To see their station and ask questions, and we're going to try to hopefully get to a couple more in the next couple of weeks to ask other departments what they like about their stations and what they don't like and what they might have done differently had they the chance and or the money. That's better meeting next Wednesday at 6. That's all I got.
Okay. Public works.
Yeah, all of security strike today. Here, all these spaces. Call Matt. He's still trying to reach out to the roots and stuff and his big. That's part of the one of those. And we're still working on Willie's field at Green side. He seemed to be known to help on. Charlie was supposed to be in on Burn Meadow, maybe a little cold for 8 for I called Bill about the beavers. We're seeing he's gonna be coming when the trap season opens up, which is in November.
Yes.
Burt Meadow, plus is one on County. They started building over by everything. I'll take them over. That new cable going for the saucer door. To be by this week, next week. How to post it at the website, do. I like it.
Okay, Vinny talked to Bruce Collins. And he's concerned about the bridge you and I looked at. I'm just curious if you anything's gone forward on that at all yet?
I guess people email me about different
Ideas?
ideas of what we can do. I'm just trying to get that all together and yeah, that's how
So you're working, right?
we'll work. Yeah. Pretty much do the same, pattern, the same route.
Yeah.
You know, you can do this and that and know that. Get the water, just get the top off, put the top on.
All right.
That's as far as up here and the cheapest way to go.
All right.
I'm good.
Right, corrector?
Yep. We wrapped up our soccer season with, teams going to the Mount Washington Valley Cup. Our 5th and 6th grade team finished second in the tournament. And our 3rd and 4th place team finished second in the tournament. Pretty good showing considering our younger team is at 2nd graders all. There's about 7 or 8 teams in each division in the tournament. So that was a good finish to the season. Basketball sign-ups are in the works. This past weekend we had the pumpkin carving event here. Good success. Bunch of kids came down and carved pumpkins. We gave out gift certificates and had a bunch of fun painting and carving pumpkins. Upcoming events, we've got the boat club this Friday at 4. We have watercolor paint classes the 1st and 3rd Thursday, which is November 4th and 18th at 1 p.m. We've got the fall ball, which is a dance and dinner honoring veterans at the Lions Building. That's November 9th. Doors open at 6. Band is 7 to 11 p.m. Back in time band. It's a country western band. We have a Friends of Rec meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 and one November 20th at 6:30. And we have the usual yoga coffee hour going on Thursdays, 9 and 9:30 and 6 p.m. And besides that, we've got the field work going on, which Public Works is doing a pretty good job out there, keeping things in line. We want to thank them. I had a email today, message from some people at the fitness center, and they were inquiring about the carpeting in the gym, looking at when or if that could be replaced in the fitness room. So maybe that's something we look at. We do have money on the fitness account.
So it's just in the gym room?
Yeah, they asked about the carpeting things. If we were, I mean, if we had got people to look at it, or was it really the next most used road is the community road. So I mean, that's maybe something depending on funding. That would probably be the next most used road. That's it.
Planning board. Joe, I still Sonia, she couldn't make it tonight, so they didn't speak on her behalf.
Sure.
Okay, Pam and I went to, Pam was there the whole time, I left earlier for other. The mayor all agreed up in Oxford. I noticed that right off the bat, there were a lot of changes to state law, which means our marijuana laws need to change with it. Also, reimbursement for, you know, right, yeah, for the marijuana itself. We can, submit to OCP, get some money back on, you know, the ordinance, writing in legal fees, things like that. So Lynn is working on that, what they have, and town clerk. The reason for the planning board is it feasible for the planning board to update the marijuana ordinance to current, so that we could possibly have a referendum, special town meeting, referendum vote, end of January, February timeframe. Is that doable?
I'll say this, we're in the middle of a subdivision right now over on, near the intersection of, Hampshire Road and, Porter Road. On the side coming towards Conway. There's a 4-lot subdivision there that we're working on. We have a walkthrough, I think it's November 12th, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're working on that. We're also working on zoning. Zoning is going along at, you know, like a pace. We're working on definitions right now. So tonight we have a workshop, and I'll bring it up and find out, you know, if we could do something pretty quickly based on what the state has, because it may just be a matter of seeing what the state did and making changes, or, which is usually easier, going to Ben McCall and saying, Ben, update ours, and he can probably have it done in no time. Whatever he's done for us, he's done in a remarkably short period of time, and it's always been excellent. So I'll mention that to everybody tonight, and then we'll report back. But I would think that we would be able to do it, you know, like by February. You know, it's just a matter of timing, workshops, that sort of thing. So, and of course, one of the things that wasn't addressed with the marijuana conference was testing for medical. They kind of pushed that aside because they had some other things. So, you know, like that's still out there. But I guess if somebody was really concerned about whether there were contaminants in their cannabis, they could always use adult recreational because that's fully tested. Where medical, it's not, you know, kind of like counterintuitive, but anyway, you know, we'll take a look at that. And we just had a public hearing for Clean Green, which is for cultivation and renewal of their permit, and that went, you know, without a hitch. So he just needs to, and he may have done it already, pay his permit fee, which I have to say he's happy that it's much different than the previous was. And that's pretty much it. So I'll bring it up tonight and we'll get back to the definite answer.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I also want to say one thing. You know, the planning board has come under attack, you know, like at times. And I just want to say that Sonia Pride does a fantastic job as the chairperson. She knows how to handle people who are getting a little edgy, which some of us, you know, might not be very good at that. But she's terrific, and she's always on call. You know, like she knows, you know, what we need to discuss, what we need to bring up, what somebody can do and can't do, when we need to refer to the attorney. So, you know, it's my opinion that she's doing a great job.
I agree. You folks on. So. we have, communication forums. Susan, Gagny, 30 Greenhouse Drive, Brownfield. This is dated, this is Mark complaint, October 29th. Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024, Senator Cody went to the town dump. And some broken cabinets, the person working at the dump total cost 100, Cody paid 100, later saw the street receipts at 50. How do they determine on the spot what fee should be, who received the extra 50? Keep copies of these receipts, who's responding? Oh. What?
I've heard of that.
Okay.
It's why the truckload for the trailer. Well,
Yeah, I got it out. It doesn't start.
oh, I'll see if you guys tomorrow. Fine. Can I get a copy of that?
Yeah. All right, we had a few more funds formed. 1028 on both, New Walker, Brownfield, one Mark compliment. From the first week, Lynn Boyle was elected treasurer tax collector. I've been impressed with her ability to produce revenue expense reports to the selectmen, showing them where each account stood to the best of her knowledge at that time. And grateful she attends the selectmen. Ways to save the town money and improve communication between employees and the public. She has shown leadership, knowledge, accountability, and profession. Thank you for joining our team, our town, and create a better road. Walker. Thank you very much. Second one. Second communication form of concern, Mr. Walker. Board of Selectmen meeting minutes. I spoke about being on 1024. But the original Board of Selectmen minutes folder on the town's website being removed. She verified while I was there that it was no longer there. And agreed to let me know when she found out what happened. As she was aware, I was trying to do my own research. I see today the folder is back in a different location, but all minutes between August 2nd, 22 and March 24 are missing. Must be corrected, and it was correct this morning. And that being it for. The Eastern Slope Regional Broadband has been closed. Town of Denmark was essentially the treasurers for this, and Town of Brownfield is going to get $94.68 back for unexpected bonds. Email from I'll say the last name. CURA came in today at 9:36. I'm not sure who this should be addressed to, but hopefully you can help. I'm not sure if you're aware that there are people trespassing at the transfer station after hours. I've noticed cars parked with people walking around the area in the evenings. They are not town employees. Seems like it's a liability issue in town. There's property around transfer station when it's OC. Yeah. So possibly others. I've I'm turning back and I've seen, just if you're heading north, or driver on the right, there's a Toyota pickup. I know he's not. He's out back. All right, the Fed Hill project, Cliff reached out to Matt Streeter, who's the Trust Unlimited grant guy, kind of the lead guy in that. And we got an email in regards to the Maine DEP permit, permit by rule. If they don't answer, we're good to go. So they didn't answer, so I guess we're good to go. So, still working on with the contractor and pricing. Hopefully we get something before March, so that we can have an option for the raising appropriate check project. So corridor. Commission budget requests and water testing results. Daily the changes. Water quality monitoring report for Brownfield sites. Okay. Yeah. Well, someone wants to read this. It's available. I don't know how to read it. By passage. Let's see if you. I mean, it's available. First contract, that was a community center. This was just an update. Well, the request contract for use of the community center.
Yeah, we just did an electronic file, nothing's changed on.
Peruse that, measurements, and acceptance. Upcoming meetings, Board of Selectmen meeting with the Friends of Rec, 10:30 at 5. Discuss exception. Oh, no. I'm crazy. We're going to be meeting in a workshop for policies, multiple policies, which is tomorrow, 10:30, starting. One of them will be 4 o'clock for the ADA assessment, 5 o'clock for the policies, and then the Board of Selectmen meeting Friends of Rec at 6:30 with community center. State and general elections, 11/5, 2024, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at town office. Public Safety Building Committee meeting, 11/6 at 6 p.m. in the town office. Safety Committee's first meeting will be 11/12, 2024, 4:30 at the town office. I think we nailed down the date for the, it's going to be for the affordable housing week. That'll happen here. We see the nail down. Is that, they got pushed out last place too much.
November 12th.
So it is going to be the 12th.
Yeah, they said they could make it.
So we'll do that here. But I think we're saying. No safety training, safety works on 19, starting at 8:30.
The sign committee is going to be in private team on Wednesday, 11/6.
Right. Did you get that? I'm sorry. Yes. What was it? Oh, good. What time? Okay, the town was in receipt of the ADA assessment Monday. Let's go, that's 10:03. Quite a bit of work to do to get us into compliance, both of this building and town office not too bad. Tomorrow before, looks like we're gonna have a workshop with Public Works Director and Rec Director. Both buildings. This assessment will be posted on the town website. Public information. So just know that we are actively working. Get into compliance. The American Disability Act. Trying to make it right. So get as much done as quickly as we can. Maine Municipal Employee Health Trust, they're looking at a 9% increase. For the health plans, 1% increase on dental. Nothing else changed. Long-term disability income protection, life insurance, or the 2.84% increase for Medicare retirees. What's on the guy?
The first one.
Okay, okay. So single 1354 employee disposed 3,039 Kyle and family 3,039. So dental was just a 1% increase. So does anybody get anything? No. Right, place. So it's not those hours.
Start like doing some.
Nobody should sign that to be having, I mean, coverage, why our values are lower than what the assessed values. You know what I mean? Yeah. Also, we said that first, we can have $5,000 loss. So I was expecting sometimes that's all these insurance companies. The next question is going to be.
Yeah.
Paying on the virus. Insurance. Small typical. No. The village and property owned by the volunteer fire company, all contacts belong to the town. So paying the lights, the heat, and insurance, you don't own the building property. Yeah, problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there's not that. Yeah. Sure.
We had I guess security call, well. Security cameras in this building. Outside, inside. Due to the ADA assessment, changing, is that inside door. Second inside door that you come into, entering the town office. It's gonna have to come. It's gonna open that door. There's not enough distance between the edge of that door and the second. So you have to take it out. So the security system is gonna have to be changed, moved to accommodate that change. So on Friday, we'll have estimates on this building and town office. Due to the fact that next week is vote day. So. All right, anybody got anything? Bob, Hannah, I will turn this over to you.
If you want to wait until the 6:30, so we'll add on or. If you want to start it.
Recess and four. Recess the selectmen's meeting until 6:30. Okay. Good job. No, tell you. You were in agreement. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are.
Okay. Oh, it's ready. Oh, right. Yes. Okay, well, oh, I sent you a file. Just.
Mute, and then I don't know what happened, it was here.
All right. Start off. Page 1. So when we went out and visited all your properties, this is what we used to essentially collect the data, right? So the front page shows. By the way, I just randomly picked those properties because one, it's a simpler property in town. And two, it recently sold. So you guys have that sort of question, we can do that too. At the bottom right, you'll see the acreage, and that's the portion there. Do you want questions in regards to acreage? If you look at the two lines above, it says 21 and 46. The 21 is going to be your base lot. So that's gonna be the improved lot. Or acreage that they own. If they had more than 2 acres, there would be additional landlines that would have different numbers associated with that. The 46 is for the well and the septic. So those aren't necessarily acreages, but they are site improvements and are billed as such. That is a bit of a throwback to the system has already had that in the program. And it would have been, or it is extensive for us to go in and do that correction for all the properties, so we maintain that versus getting rid of it. Any questions on the first page? Okay,
So it says, 145 for acreage, 21.
yep,
What does the 2.0 mean for well septic?
so that's the well and the septic, so right, 1 for well, 1 for septic, 2. Thanks. If someone only had a well, or they only had a septic, they would only have a 1 for a site improvement.
So everyone that has a well and or septic is taxed because of just those 2 items. Which is probably everybody in Brownfield.
Yeah, just about, some of the camps might not well or septic system. So those ones will be really the ones that wouldn't have those, but,
Other towns do that as well.
depends on how they initially set up their system. As I said, the system here was already set up with that in place. So we just continued with it. In order to migrate towards just including it in the land price, because right, it would go with the land, would be more extensive for us to do here than it would be necessarily beneficial to just explain it. Possibly doing that change in the future, but for right now, that's how the system's set up.
Do we know what percentage of towns in Maine do that?
I'd say virtually all of them, most of them.
They have it in some form, so either it's included in the base lot rate, or it's split out as like we have 2 individual items.
Okay.
But it's included in some point.
The reason I'm speaking up is because we've done a conversion in a different town that I was the primary in. And what happened was, within the software, there was one line where unimproved lot is, let's say, off the top of my head, $40,000, improved lot, $50,000. So instead of enumerating it there, you only see it on one lot, but still there'd be a discrepancy. Because if you were to sell those 2 lots, both of them side by side, the one that already had a well and septic on it, be more valuable. So that's why it's incorporated. So different systems incorporate different things.
Any other questions on that initial page?
Are you as assessors aware at the time that you make evaluation of whether or not the person has a veteran's exemption? And you calculate that into your assessing process?
So veterans exemptions are forms that you guys would, that a veteran would provide to us along with their DD 214 or something, just explaining so everybody else knows. Those are due by April 1st, just like a homestead exemption. If we do not receive them by April 1st, generally they're not eligible until the following year. But those are on that first page. If you look under exempt, that would be where the homestead exemption would go and where veterans exemption would go. So it takes that land, buildings, adds those together, and subtracts the exemption, and that's what gives you the total number.
I'm aware of that. My question was, are you aware of a person's exemption status at the time that you do a property evaluation?
When I'm going out, I have this page. I have this exact page. So whether I'm aware of it or not, I'm actually there to look at the building itself, not necessarily the exemption status of the property. Okay. Any other questions on that front page? Go on to the second back side of that. So this is what we look at when we're looking at the building itself, right? So this particular property happens to be a Cape house. style. So usually that's a story and a half, so not necessarily like a finished attic, but actually has headroom for a half story upstairs. And then we go right down, it's got vinyl siding, asphalt roof, built in '86. It's got a full basement that happens to have some living space in it. And all that information is in that little lovely diagram that's up to the left. So it just says, or right, sorry. My left if I'm pointing here. Says that it's a story and a half. It's got a basement and deck and a garage. The square footage location, if you look to the third column, pretty much in the center of the page. If you go about halfway down, it says, I'm sorry, a quarter of the way down, it says square foot footprint. It gives 864, so that's what we use as a base square footage for the house. Yes.
On grade. Your card says 5, it was 4. How did that happen?
If the card says, so grade is quality of construction. If does Bob want to input on this a little bit?
It's a little bit of a weakness of the software that you have to work with.
So it can mean a couple of things. Usually, quality of construction can be, instead of being single pane, which would be kind of like bridge, we have double pane. Instead of vinyl siding, with shingle siding, wood siding. Instead of 2x6 construction, 2x4, right? 2x.
So could you repeat your question, please?
My question is, if the property tax card has a grade 5, okay? And the calculation, the grade done according to the Maine manual is 3.6, which would round off to 4. Why doesn't it say 4 on the card?
Because the main manual is irrelevant to this town. It's only used in about 2 out of 480 towns in the state.
Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the description of what a 4th grade versus a 5th grade versus a 3rd grade versus a 2nd grade characteristics.
Gotcha.
Now, I'm assuming the only way one could really do that thoroughly would be an in-house inspection.
You got a couple of different questions in there, so let's also try to do it again. There are multiple different assessing systems in the state. The one that is published by the state is used as an example, but no town is required to use it. We could easily be using EFGHIJK elemental P or some other kind. What matters is the map that's behind it. And that map will vary from town to town because the values of the properties vary from town to town. And the difference in quality will vary from town to town. I used to do assessment work in the town of Freeport, and we had 14 grades of houses. And the steps between the individual grades is markedly different than they are here. And so each town has its own multipliers behind these. So,
and that's not to say that necessarily the grade or quality of construction won't necessarily be higher than what you actually do.
But I'm assuming that grade 5 is highest quality.
Actually, it goes higher. We have a grade 6, and we can add on additional percentage above that. So,
and to go to the second part of your question, trying to help you out here to get more thorough. The town also maintains code enforcement files, and in code enforcement files, for people who apply for building permits and so on, how stuff is built is in there. And so we can look at that stuff to be able to know what went into construction of a house. So, yeah.
So beyond grade, we have condition of a house, right? Condition of a house is also a factor in how building is essentially looked. You have a crappy, you can have a good good quality bone structure, but it can be really deteriorating due to the condition, right? So you have like an average build quality, but your condition can be like really poor because maybe they didn't put siding on it. Or maybe the roof started leaking 10 years later. So those do both go into the valuation of your properties. And I'm getting a lot of blank looks, so do we have questions?
Does the building style affect the property valuation?
In the specific town of Brownfield, yes. When we do a market analysis, so we look at properties that have sold, right? Compare them to what we have them assessed at. That's what essentially a market analysis is. Making sure that we're assessing a property based off of what they're sold for. In the town of Brownfield, we noticed that log homes were selling for more than a typical stick-built house. So we were able to negate those ones, their own specific higher multiplier, if you will, for buildings. Mobile homes would be a similar situation. You know, they obviously are less expensive than a standard stick built house, so they get a lesser of a multiplier when it comes to square footage.
Is the location of the property where the house is built factor into it?
Yep.
What the view might be?
Yep.
Or-
So on the front page, if you look up on the neighborhood, it's gonna be right under the 46th Street. If this had a view or something along those lines, it would say A view or B view, depending on what it is. Might say river, might say association, something along those lines.
Is the view at,
Huh?
what percentage is the view at property? That,
Depends on the sales in the town. Depends on the sales within the town. So we have multiple sales within this town that obviously properties have sold for that have a similar or equal view within the town. Then that's how we have to assess a property.
still an answer to my question. Must be a percentage.
It's not a percentage. It's
Why does, well, there is
the market, within the market. You have your base lot that has no side improvements. You also got a lot that doesn't have side improvements. It's very similar. You got a lot that has no view. You got a lot that does have a view. Right? They're segregated with their own market. In order to assess a property, we have to look at the view as the options. We do look at the properties that have their own view to get segregated out into their own real estate.
view part of the property value or part of the home?
It is so it's part of the land value.
So if you built, so the assessed value of the house itself is not part of the view. The view value is built into whatever the assessed value of that property is.
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
If we can go back quickly to the first page, sir.
I actually, she's had her hand up for a quick minute.
Well, when I first bought, I had a mobile. When I first bought, I could see the mountains. But now I've been there like 25 years. It's all grown up. The wet names.
So, and now you're going, but I don't have that view anymore, right? But the property still has that potential for a view. It still follows that plan. It's not like a new property owner wouldn't decide that they couldn't cut it down and get that view back.
Well, who cuts the avenue?
If you have wetland,
It's not mine.
it depends on that.
What's exactly, they have to do
There,
You can tax somebody on potential.
you can, so assessing is based on highest and best use, right? If you're gonna go and sell it on the open real estate market, it's what we have to assess a property as. It's gonna be as the highest and best use. If the realtor goes, hey, you have a lovely view that you could, where are they gonna put on that market list? Look at the view that's potentially here. That is how we have to assess a property, is what could you sell it on the open market for?
So all the letters that you send out previously telling everybody what their new assessment was, those are 100% market value. Is that correct?
That is what we based off of what we have for market value, yes.
Okay, so if I look at anybody's property, that is what it would sell for. Say,
That is what we are essentially guessing that it would, yes.
you're guessing.
Based on a calculation. So that calculation is, right, we have assessing software. We take the assessed value and we look at all of the sales. We have to take and do a calculation in order to get to market value.
Because I can show you 3 dozen properties there. Way under that. I mean, if you know the prices for stuff, don't you? Have you seen any $180,000 houses lately?
If I could address that a little bit, 2 parts. First part is, we do what the state has mandated that we do. And that is create a model, test it against sales that have actually happened. And the assumption by the state is, if it works for those that did sell, it's gonna work for those that don't sell. Well, it doesn't always. It's an approximation at best, number 1. Number 2, assessors are always backward looking. In other words, we have to look at sales that have already happened in the past. Unfortunately, the market is continuing to do this. So as a general rule, we tend to be falling behind all the time. We're trying to keep up with the market as best we can. And at least in my career, I can only remember one time where I actually devalued properties, the valuation didn't. That was back in 2008. I dropped property values 15%. Most of the time, we're playing catch up. So I hear what you're saying.
Right, but some of them are substantial.
Yes, that's right.
In 100,000 or more.
Indeed. And
so that's not fair.
Well, that's why we are annually going out and recanvassing the town to try to bring equity as best we can.
I know, but you just did it, and it's still not right.
It was right in general, based on what was there at the time, based on 23 sales. 2023 sales. Yes, ma'am. We had a lot of hands going here. Sorry. Go ahead.
I sold a house in the spring of 20.
I go to Christina's broad application, and I'll bring it up.
Yes.
And this is just one of many. This property first sold in March of 2022, sold for $445,000. Then it sold a little less than a year later, April 3rd, 2023, for $519,000. That comp was out. It was there.
Which property are you talking about?
Well, 3 Ellis Lane, right?
So you have information that we don't have. So
It sold. The assessed valuation, $217,000.
There you go. So,
and this is one of, I would say conservative. This is one of at least 200 to 300 properties that I see in the town like this.
And I did the improvement.
So
I lived there. And that's was fun.
can I ask a question? Bill,
Yeah,
valuation was 217 and it sold for 5.
excuse me,
The
can't,
valuation was 217
217,
and it sold for what?
531,000.
Okay, so my question is gonna be to everybody out here. When COVID hit, we all saw it, that people were fleeing the city from out of state. They were coming up here and they were offering 150,000 over asking price to get the house.
But COVID was beyond what it was
It's
sold.
beyond what
They were still, it was still 5.
It's not that much. What's that?
the time. When did you do the
2006. I never well.
2006?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's completely.
Another thing,
spray foam insulation. Nice upgrades, wood floors throughout.
Another thing that happened as well, everybody needs to consider. Town of Brownfield didn't have a reevaluation. 21 years,
Why was that?
21 years,
Why?
because we didn't do it.
Is there a state law that mandates it within?
It's 10 years.
20 years, no reevaluation? 20 years,
21 years.
right? The property value on buildings, this town. The old assessment, the new assessment that we're looking today, only rose 37%. That's a 20-year period. Where happened the valuation? Why did that become 80%?
I understand.
Well, I don't understand. What I'm saying is, in 20 years, we get a new assessment. That new assessment, what I'm saying is, we didn't find all the value in the town reassessment. And what happened is, you only have a 37% increase in 20 years on building value in the town of Brown, where the market says it's conservative for a 20-year period would be conservative, probably 100%. And that's being conservative. I'm not talking about COVID last year, 3 years. I'm talking over the whole period of time. And I also have right here another one.
All right, so we're not gonna talk about individual properties, obviously, we don't have the information yet.
Bob Hall sold for $511,000.
But here's the deal, we got other.
Value of 323.
I just want to add one more thing in before we go to others. One of the things we've discussed with the selectmen is that one of the things that's happened in the past, along with the 20-year hiatus, is the, as Bill was saying, the exact same pricing mechanisms used all along. What we've discussed with the selectmen and what we wanted to do going forward is to annually be able to revisit that in light of sales that come along and be able to continually adjust as sales happen. We haven't had a lot of sales relative to the size of the town. And so we will be able to, as time goes on, be able to continually adjust the pricing mechanisms. This is our first year in this town, and so we're gonna have to work on continually adjusting something that hasn't been adjusted for 20 years. And so you're right, it's not an overnight thing, but the selectmen believe that we're gonna be able to continuously improve that. That's what we aim for. Yes, I'm sorry, Andrew.
So the lady in the back, had her hand up, this will,
I just want to correct. Jeez. You haven't had an assessment in 21 years.
Right.
So you all like. And I believe one of the selectmen was a realtor that was elected. I was told he did that. He actually reassessed their fund. Not sure not.
2006 is the last one.
That's around the time that the selectmen got recalled. The three that got in, well. Not cheap. Anybody know about that? I mean, those people aren't here right now.
I wasn't around.
yeah. Correct.
So you base this on the number of sales, over how many month period?
We look back from 21 to 23, but we pretty much used only 2022 and 23 sales. 21 was just a general guideline for us to kind of see if there was any trends. You know, Riverbend had a substantial amount of sales within it between that period of time, so we did, you know, look at it. So
how many sales did you have in that time?
I think it was about 40 or 50 sales.
Yeah, and the problem is about half of them were in Riverbend, so distribute out to the rest of the town, it just weren't.
Well, my whole business got 87,000, but I can't get an equity loan. So somebody, I'm not complaining of it. How would somebody get a loan?
So let's go through the abatement process then. All right, so we've kind of gone over how we collect the data, the information on the property card. If you guys want your own property card, certainly shoot us an email and we'll provide along with anybody else's. It's all information. As far as the abatement process goes, you have 185 days from the date of commitment. I think here is in the March range of when the last date would be. I think they committed in the middle of September for taxes. Yeah, so you have 185 days from the date of commitment in order to submit an abatement application. And what the abatement application pretty much says is you don't think that the property can sell for what we have it listed at. You have to provide information. The burden of proof winds up being on the taxpayer when it comes to disputes of your value. Plus, anyway.
About the appeal process, I
Yeah.
tend to do more of the appeal stuff than him does. So the burden of proof is on you to show that it's manifestly wrong, number one, and number two, what your valuation ought to be when you submit your application. You give some kind of evidence that'll support it. So we have received applications from people and have gone through them and have granted some reductions in value. I tend to agree with Bill. In most cases, we're still behind the market. We're trying to catch up, but we've got a ways to go, and that's why I'm glad that the selecting
behind market.
Can't be most.
But we're trying to think about what the next person who would buy a place would pay. We're supposed to put our minds in what somebody else would pay if they were to approach you.
Just because you can't get an equity loan doesn't mean that it's not necessarily worth what we have to assess that. An equity loan might be just on the building itself, not necessarily the entire property. It's just like if you get an assessment for a mortgage, right? You get a value assessment for pricing a mortgage out. Their interest is in, well, what if you default on that? They're not necessarily going to give you a full market value for an appraisal on your property from a mortgage standpoint. Same with an insurance standpoint, right? They're insuring stuff, so they don't want you to burn your place down. They're not going to necessarily insure you to the full price of the market.
Not even there.
Sure, how about Bob Jason?
Okay, and yes, sir, right here. Yeah, thank you.
Go online, compare your property to someone else's. You can't get the information on your tax cards like you can in any other town. That's number one. There's 200 or 300 properties in this town that are undervalued. I know a lot of what's here, but it's selfish. This is not the law. It's fraud.
Could we just listen to this gentleman right here? Yeah, there are just a lot of talking background. It's kind of hard to hear you.
Well, I'm not agreeing to it.
Yeah.
My point is, with 200 or 300 properties in the town undervalued, why is it you didn't have any problems valuing the new ones that were built in the last 3 or 4 years and raising my went up 50%? I know properties that didn't go 10%. The fact the town, the other factor in this that you gotta think about is the town is gonna raise $700,000 more this year on the new assessment. That's $700,000 more this year, $700,000 more next year. Where's the money go? No one can explain why the town needs another $700,000 this year.
I really like to address that question because it's a really important one. And I'm going to ask the board's help in addressing this in just a minute. I'll do my side and I'll have them do their side. What he's referring to is that every year the town meeting votes to raise money for taxes. And the thing is we have other revenues in hand besides the property tax. And we look at the other revenues. Whoops, let me back up a second. Let's say the town's going to spend $2 million. Well, what we do is we take the $2 million going to be spent, subtract the other revenues. Let's just say it's $100,000. Now you got $1.9 million. That's what you gotta get for property taxes. But what the town can do is say, hey, we've got some savings. Let's put that toward the property tax. So instead of raising 1.9 million, we'll subtract $500,000. So now we only have to raise 1.4 million because we're gonna take 500,000 out of savings and put it toward reducing taxes. And that's what the town here has historically done. But the town meeting last year voted to put no money towards reducing taxes. And that happened at the town meeting. So I'm gonna let, before you follow up, and we will give you definitely a chance to, I just want Rick to chime in a little bit on, you can.
Yes, there was an article to, in the warrant. To use up to, keyword, up to 700,000 on surplus to offset tax rate. It did not pass. The reason that did not pass is because we have to have $950,000 readily available to show the USDA who just gave us a $2.898 million grant. We have to pay 5%, which is $950,000. So it was a smart move not to utilize that 700,000 out of reserve, because we have to prove to the government we have the money to accept that 2.898 million. Now, also in last year's warrant, there was an article for $225,000. Okay, that was for engineer and architect for the public safety building, the new building.
And that's not part of the second.
It is part of it. That gives us $925,000 that we can utilize and show the USDA, the federal government, yes, we have the money on hand. So that 700,000 is what we needed anyway. So if we just offset the tax rate, our mill rate would possibly be 16 to come up with that rest of that money. Now we're still $25,000 short.
Yeah, but you're gonna raise the tax bills they sent out last year, used to be 1.2. The tax bills they sent out this year used to be 1.3. Yeah, that's a $70,000 increase over last year. And you'll do that $70,000 again next year. One at a time.
When we don't even know what the budget is. You don't know what the budget is. You don't know what county tax is going to be. You don't know what state tax is going to be. Now, I want to impress upon people. Town meeting, they come in and they vote. We propose, this is the required budget. Now, I want to point several factors out. For a very long time, we did not have accurate accounting numbers for the town of Brownfield. For a very long time, folks. I'm not talking a couple of years. I can get the paperwork in the black and white that states that 4 years consecutively, to the tune of $1.2 million, there were accounting errors that forced the increase in the mill rate. That we would come in, do an article to offset, take it out of reserve and offset the tax rate. But because there were so many mathematical errors, well, now he's going to give us the accurate, and we're going to budget because we have true numbers to overcome.
You think by June, when we vote on the next budget, we'll have those numbers, so
Yes, 100%. 100%. I really think, I will not speak for my colleagues. My opinion is, we are going to see an exponential change in the budgeting process and the amounts of money that we are raising and appropriating than this town's seen in decades. Because we have somebody that is extremely capable, is on the ball, It does a smoking good job. I did 8 years on this board prior to having a year off and then coming back. Not one time did we ever receive a treasurer's report. I actually had to ask to be educated on it. I've never seen one. No, how did we do? What is this? We never received it. Now it's here for 8 years consecutively, folks. 8 years. Never knew. There were 14, 15 accounts. Nobody in this town had any idea of one of them had 100,000. Well, here we are raising appropriating $100,000 more than we need to. We already have money in the bank, but nobody knew about it because of shitty accounting. Look, the times have changed.
Has the audit been completed?
They are being completed.
Which Rick, thank you for that. I know we can talk about that. I know about not having a post audit, all that. Looks like it's gonna change. That's great. I do have one question for the appraiser. Question is, have you yet reviewed the new list of all the assessed values in town to see where the inequities are, or is that going to be a continuing thing?
We had to get past the tax commitments first and get past getting the tax bills out first. But that is going to be a wintertime project. That is correct. That is something we're going to work on.
You need to address just the idea. There's a lot of properties, a lot of properties assessed at 200,000. If they went on the market, this is based on my 35 years of experience of selling property in Brownfield, not a novice in this. Go on the market tomorrow and sell for double.
There's no question there are properties here that are undervalued. The numbers have been thrown out 200 or 300. I don't know if that's the right number or not, but you gotta remember there's almost 2,000 properties in town. Okay, so we're not by any means saying you've gotten everything right. As the question was asked earlier, we had a fairly limited number of sales to work with, and we are using this rolling, ongoing process to continue to update. And we are going to continue to address the kind of things.
One last question. If one is going to file an abatement,
Yes.
what are they? One files for debate. We've already agreed the number of sales in this town is limited. It's tough to find sometimes with certain properties to find comparables that would show a value. But if one is able to file for debate based on the fact property of equal stature, equal nature is assessed at evaluation way lower than what the individual comparable was. Can he file for an abatement, he or she file for an abatement based on the value of other properties in the town?
The effect of that is, let's just say, out of the 1,800 to 2,000 properties that most of them are near market value, and some that are in order to make things equitable, we should reduce those 1,600 down to same level as yours. That was the only way to get it. Cut everybody else. That's what we have to have. So the better choice is to find those that are under and raise them up.
Oh, that's it.
Well, that's like he was asking me, said we have to get the tax payment and tax bills out of the way. So that's what happens.
The 200 or 300 that are.
That's part of the research requirement that we have to do and why we're committed to an ongoing process. It's pretty hard to fix 20 years of stuff not going great in one go, and that's where we're at. Yes.
By the way, statutorily, we are required to, well, constitutionally, state of Maine Constitution, we're required to do a reval every 10 years. By state statute, we're required to visit a property physically every 4 years. So just so you guys are well aware that that's the town's statutory and constitutional requirements.
Having said that, towns ignore that all the time. And that's one of the reasons they get into the fix that they do.
When you just did the assessment, you didn't go around and look at each property.
Oh yeah, I did. I visited about, I think of the properties that are improved, I visited probably 95 to 98% of them. The ones that I did not visit have either a gate across them, couldn't walk in because it was goat trail or something along those lines.
I was so slow assessments on some property.
Some of that has to do with just the way the condition of them was at the time. It could be a mix of the age of the property, because all of that factors into the quality or the building appreciation. So I'm gonna move on to other people. You've had your hand up and down multiple
Yeah,
times.
just, you talked about, comps.
Yep,
If you have a unique house, timber frame log home,
yep.
where do you get your comps for something like that in the small town of Brownfield? Do you have to
So-
go outside Brownfield?
Unfortunately, we are required to stay within the town, right? So the town provides very specific services. If you go outside of the town of Brownfield, you're potentially like in Freiburg, they offer rescue, they offer police. Those are services that essentially influence possibly a sale price. So we have to stay within the limits of Brownfield. Other things that would not qualify as a sale, take the right over the bridge there on the left, the house sold for a little over 9,000, almost $1 million. They're in tree growth. We can't use that sale. They get automatically reduced state statutory rates, so we can't use that as a qualified sale.
This is a real minor thing, but what happens is the state audits the sales that we look at. And it tells us, in part, the ones we can't use, that we'd like to use. But because there are special conditions like, which kind of really like, again, narrows down the sample. And ends up with something that's huge sells.
Just to save you a second trip over to my property, our house is not undervalued.
Okay.
The other way.
So in the meantime, the mill rate is set.
So she has her hand up.
So I just wanted to get, so on the house that we were just discussing, Bill and I. Sold in 22, 23. Did you not have that sales information? In your hands and to be able to value that house, because you said you have to put your mind in the potential seller. Well, it was sold.
So when it was sold in 2023, the house across the street was completely raised. There was no building on that property. Did they know that possibly a new building was gonna go through? You're talking 3 Ellis Lane, right?
Yeah, when I sold it, the people knew because I told them.
Okay,
And they also have water access, not just water people. They still have a beautiful.
and you know, we can look at it again, but right now, yes, it was used as possible comps within the town, as on the market. But it can also be offset by other properties within the town.
So that specific sale price, that specific house was not factored into the assessment.
It's not on that, it was back because we look at a commitment value, right? We look at what it gets assessed for and we compare it to the sales price. We have to do almost like an average, right? We can't use the highest sales to ratio study. Getting technical. Bob, can you dumb it down?
I feel where she's coming from, because when a lot of times when people go out and buy houses or get a mortgage or something, they get an appraisal and there's like 3 comparables. Well, we're not supposed to do that. What we're supposed to do is create a mathematical model that has a pricing system. Then it gets applied to sales, and then if on average it comes out okay, then the system is okay. The failing of that is if you have a bucket of ice water here, and a bucket of burning coals here, and you put a foot in each one and go, oh, on average, it's just fine. And this is kind of what we're stuck with. The system that we're supposed to do is look to the average. On average, the numbers come out valuing. And we're not saying that is awesome, but it is one of the things that was in the ice bucket. It was not in the fire bucket.
Yeah, but for you to say, we have to put ourselves in mind of what that property sell for is not really accurate. Because you have access to what that house sold for before you did the valuation. So that's my concern with how you're explaining this. It doesn't ring true.
It's one of many in a list of sales, as opposed to just being considered. You go ahead, folks, you can keep track.
If I have an appraisal from the beginning of 2022, because I did a refi on a house, is that sufficient enough to bring to you? Because I filed an abatement. Gary and Lisa, we filed an abatement. I get a letter back saying you were denied, Mark and Patricia. So.
With our interest money.
Yeah, so it was the generic letter, names. Yeah, we know the name.
I don't know about that.
Sorry.
No.
But yes, we do have generic letters for denials for partial or for full. It's just how we do it, just because it's easy to put bullet points into why it's denied. If you supply us with that, certainly we'll look at it. From 22, that could be used for this commitment, but next commitment, it would probably fall with it. Yeah, it would be considered old on our end.
I specifically asked for a meeting. And I didn't, all you did was send me a letter and just blow me off.
So we need to set up an appointment through the town hall to meet with you.
Yep, so you can set an appointment. Yeah, so if you had supplied that with us, we would have looked it over.
If we screwed up like that, we sincerely apologize. I mean,
so
believe me, we get so much correspondence, and that's not an excuse. So if we did it wrong, I apologize.
I just want to say.
No, absolutely.
So
I think we talk about the email address.
number one, when it comes to an abatement application, supply us with all of your documents. Call me. Certainly give us a call, shoot us an email and say, hey, by the way, I submitted that application. Can we review it or go over it with you? I want to bring more information to you. Certainly do that. We send an automatic denial letter just if there's no supporting documents, if there's anything along those lines, just so that the appeal process can then get started if you wanted to appeal it. That's not saying that the abatement process, you can't file more abatements. You have until 185 days from commitment to file as many abatement applications as you want.
Okay.
On the last page of your packet there, obviously there's a whole bunch of lists, links to certain informational stuff.
But at the top is the assessor email address. So if you've got them on documentation in electronic form, we can send it to us.
I don't want to, I want to sit down.
No, talking to us would be great too. What I'm saying is if we receive it in advance, it gives us a chance to look at it. So when you can come in, we'll have an intelligent conversation. Because I'm sure you've gone through the fine-tooth comb, know it. And so if we have to be reading it while you're sitting there, it's has a lot.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, great.
Can I just ask one other question? Answer from you, it's a quick, has nothing to do with my assessment, right?
Yeah.
I just want to make the point that if there are those 300 properties out there that are under assessed,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got 300 very happy property owners that are paying less.
Well, right now
I get mad because somebody else raises that issue, but I want to emphasize that what happens is, correct me if I'm wrong, if those properties are brought up with fair share of everybody, that will spread across the board, mill rate will go down.
it should help some.
They will see almost an incremental, very incremental increase in their property taxes. Whereas people that were way up will see much better downside.
So, Bill, you've seen 200 or 300 that are under assessed. Have you seen 200 or 300 that are over assessed?
300 properties,
That are over assessed.
I think there's at least 200. I'll say 2.
Okay, so those essentially offset each other.
It's fine, folks.
No, I don't think it's not.
It's fine.
Hey, can we please answer?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this goes to my earlier illustration about the fire and the ice, and that's why there has to be a continuing rolling process of review to be able to pick this stuff up. And eventually, as more sales happen in the markets that come into us.
Number one, you guys see if there's anybody's undervalued, bring it to our attention. Number two, more abatements. More abatements that you guys bring in thinking that you guys are over assessed, more information we collect. right? You're gonna bring in your mortgage information?
Yeah.
Great, that'll give us more information as far as what your property is potentially worth.
Right.
That can also go towards other people's property. If you have something similar to other people. Same with the deal with this log homes will go towards everybody else.
But again, not worried about what my property is worth.
So
It's the mill rate.
so
Yeah, I guess something totally different that's asked, but the town's considering possibly zoning.
Mhm.
Now, is residential and commercial mixed on 113 in Main Street. Now, will the resident, if those areas zoned commercial, will the residential properties on that, their potential value be assessed as commercial and their rate go up?
so
Property values, or will they be staying as residential till it sells to commercial?
so we can take the Mennonites farm place as an example as commercial property, right? Everybody would agree that that's utilized mostly as commercial building. At the end of the day, it's what it can sell on the open market.
So,
What will that empty building sell on the open market?
so if someone has a lot in their residential property line, but all of a sudden that area gets sold commercial, are they gonna be evaluated as commercial property?
Because
you mentioned potential before.
it is potential of the property, but if they don't have a business that would, we can't assess a building based off of a business name. It's
Okay.
what the buildings are already there, like I said, the Mennonite stand, if that Mennonite wasn't there, what would go in there? It's just an empty warehouse at that point.
The other thing we have to think about is, we, again, being backward looking, we have to wait for some commercial sales to come in. You know, there's sort of an assumption, oh, it's zoned commercial, now it's more valuable. Well, how many commercial outfits are beating the doors down to come into town? Yeah, it's not really happening. So adding commercial zoning may be really good as a way to control where stuff happens. But it's not necessarily gonna increase value. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe Walmart will. I don't think it's happening. But I just want to ask Ricky a question. This is my turn. Is that I understand that the town voted to have $0 go from other revenue to offset the rate.
No,
Right.
town voted to not take it out 700,000 from reserve.
From reserves, excuse me, I misspoke. Is that gonna be a one-time experience? Do you
It has
foresee?
been passed.
I'm sorry?
It hasn't been,
Okay,
okay, like I said, it was a 4-year deal, 3 or 4-year deal, 1.2 million. Because of mathematical things. If you look back in your historical warrants. That money got rolled right back into offset tax rate, okay? But because there were more new mathematical mistakes. We didn't just get dropped in the nowhere. Okay, so we were still doing the same thing. That's gonna exponentially change. Okay, so. In setting tax rate. The assessors have a worksheet, they have one of them.
Which you guys have, it's the third piece of paper.
School tax, which went up. County tax, which went up, oh, and they made a mistake, and we had to pay more. In a selectmen meeting. And then it comes down to what the taxpayers want to spend. Okay, so all those yeses, spend the money. Yeah, there you go. That's what forms. What we have to raise and appropriate via taxing. To pay the bills. So one of the things that we typically get yearly, between 290 and 310 in excise. Roughly about somewhere in there, okay? There were times at town meeting. The lady would stand up religiously. I make a motion that we utilize all that. Done. Well, that didn't need to be raised and appropriated because it had already been appropriated with everybody's registration. It wasn't part of the tax. So that helped in offset what we had to raise and appropriate for our budget. Well, there are years that didn't happen. Well, that money rolls into reserve. Typically, now that we have competency to have the financial information put in front of the board, you can put an article to utilize funds out of reserve to offset the tax. It's been very difficult in the past. We had to rely on the auditors to give us that number because we couldn't get the number from our office.
I hear everything you said, that's fine. What I'd like to know is, how long will it take to get the millions of dollars of underassessed properties in this town up the other side? Now, if you could skip over a large part of the town and you value that, maybe come and value mine. Bring them all up and I'll shut it.
To be fair, I probably value it up. But I ain't got 16th of the house property you got. But my taxes went up.
How much?
68,000 total. I live in a 900 square foot house with a, what, 28 by 36 shop. And that's it. But the value went up 68,000. I only have $750,000.
Neither do I.
This is kind of a little bit of an anecdote. My family has a camp in northern Maine, about an hour north of Bangor. And on my way up there, I stopped to see the assessor in the town of Lincoln. And I, came on vacation, I said, I'll stop in and see what's going on. And we had the usual shop talk, people who are in the same profession and stuff. And she, out of the blue, she said to me, what do I do when on the same street, I have this one ranch house sold for 180,000 and this other one sold for 320, and they're hardly any different. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. We do see that around, fair amount. And it's not an excuse, but it is an experience. And it does.
Merrill Corner, we have two houses neighbors. Different style of houses, different age, all of that stuff. One sold for $200,000 more than the other one. How do you even compare two properties like that and justify a $200,000 difference when they're neighbors? That's the type of sales and the type of buying that we're having to deal with when we're coming up with these averages, is just because we have these weird pricing that's just on the market. When it comes to maybe a more stable market like it used to be, we'd be able to kind of pinpoint an average of what sales are really selling for within $100,000, but that's just not the way it is. She's had her hand up for a while.
I just want, no, I wasn't complaining, I'm just trying to learn.
No, it's all good. That's what we're here for tonight. So I did make mention to that third page that has the municipal valuation calculation form. So this is the form that we have to send to the state. This is how we calculate your mill rate. When I say we, it's a combination of us, the select board, and essentially you guys as the taxpayers. The first section is the assessment section. So lines 1 through 6, that's the valuation of the town. That's our end. That's what we've compiled in our software. The lines 7 through 11, that is what was voted on by residents, by the school, by the county. That's all of that money that you essentially have to pay in bills. And then 12 and 13, those are the reductions to, and 14, those are the reductions to reduce those bills. So revenue sharing is a calculation by the state. I think that last page has how they calculate. I couldn't tell you how they calculate it.
So everybody knows there were 3 years that the state, they rescinded that right there. So he didn't get it. That the state called. So that did change some of them. Did happen.
So line 7 through 14 essentially are from you guys as the taxpayers of the town. And voting folks. Lines 15 through 23. So net amount to be raised by the tax rate is $4,006,009.98. That's how much money the town needed to raise. There's a whole bunch of math in there. I get it. What it essentially comes down to are 3 important factors. Number 1, the town is allowed to raise up to 5% above what you guys voted for multiple reasons. Number 1, people don't pay their taxes. The bills still have to be paid. So in order for them to be able to still pay those bills, they have to raise a little bit more than what is raised by you guys.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
So you folks get a clue on that. Town just filed 98 liens against properties for taxes not being paid. So everybody needs to take that into account. The taxes aren't paid on people's properties. That's money that the rest of us have to make up. The money has to be available. Municipal bills have to be paid. It's statute. So keep that in mind, 98 properties. So put a number on it. That could be $250,000. I don't know. I mean, seriously, you know, that's a lot of money. Where does it come from? The rest of us. And that's part of the calculation. And it's really difficult to do.
20 million in uncollected funds, a lot of my
Right, and then that's just
We're talking about 20 million in uncollected funds due to the low appraisal.
You're saying 20 million?
20 million,
He's saying low appraisals.
20 million, 200 times 100,000. Isn't that 20 million?
Yeah, but you're only doing 1335.
200 properties are under assessment, 100,000.
Okay, now
20
do
million.
that. Do that.
20 million that the property value.
So now the 200 that are over assessed. Does it offset? I mean, if we're talking averages, like I don't know how
There's a lower mill rate. Oh, wait a minute, Max, lowers the mill rate. You even said it in your own thing that you sent out to us. Don't worry about it. Because of the assessment, new assessment, the mill rate will definitely go down.
and it is.
And it went 2.35.
And some of that has been.
Wait, with 1780.
The average over the last 4 years, the mill rate was 15.75. I'm going down, Jonathan, last year.
But what I want to point out is, you just said, average over the last 4 or 5 years.
For the mill rate.
Right, understood. But what I'm saying is the math was wrong that we were given the second of it. That's why it went on. That's why if you historically look back in your warrants and see how much money in those articles went back from out of the reserve. So out of 5 years, $1.2 million went back offset trade. So we dropped the mill rate $5. But seriously, 1787 to 13, so $4 and change.
17.8 is an average. The year before was 16.
So moving on. So unpaid taxes, you guys gotta raise a little bit more. People who file abatements, obviously, we have to pay for those somehow. The pretty goes back to the. So that's why abatements are deemed as, you guys need to supply us with information, because essentially we're giving everybody else's money to you guys to reduce your taxes. That is that last number on this page, that overlay number, that is the combination of that. It's actually like little over 2% of the net to be raised.
The overlay, that's $70,009.99. The only thing that money can be utilized for is tax abatement. It cannot be utilized for anything else.
Now, should it not be used?
Goes into overlay.
Should the overlay not be used though by the end of the year,
Right.
that money will then be put into the undesignated fund balance in order to be used at.
That whatever is.
Bill, I did want to address one minor thing, that we're raising a point that it did not drop as much as it would have. Historically, the town could plug in about 700,000 on savings to keep the mill rate down. If he had done this year, the tax rate would have been under $11. But it did not happen. So what I'm just trying to make a minor point, that's because I appreciate what you're saying, but what I'm saying is the amount of drop would have been more had this, and I'm not saying that the reasons behind not doing that are not legitimate, maybe they are. I'm not part of town finance. I'm just saying that there would have been a bigger if we had done this.
But that's $700,000. If we had applied it to the budget, which we did not,
Would have dropped your mill rate down to about.
what would have happened to the fire department?
We wouldn't have the money, we'd have to raise it.
And a meeting that we attended on the fire department that you were at,
Sorry?
and a meeting about the fire department where you were at, Currently said that there was, that the fire department would not cost a single extra cent because the money was already there. Was that the $700,000 you were talking about?
700 that did not pass to offset tax rate, plus the 220 or the 225 that was raised and appropriated for the engineering and gives us 925,000.
So he was counting on that article being defeated.
Are you talking what meeting?
At the town meeting, when the man made the motion to not apply the $700,000 to offset the budget.
I can't answer for the fire chief, I don't want to see on that.
Well,
But I will say this. I voted to not expend that $700 tax rate. Because I know we have to have $950,000 to show government money. So we're better off to not give it back. People remember correctly when the whole, and this is strictly on the public safety. In several meetings, it was stated that we could not go to, we don't want to go to a bond, 10-year bond, remain state bond bank, go to the bank for a loan or whatever the time frame. What the actuality was, we could not go to the bond bank. We could not go to the bank and ask them to borrow money because we did not have audits.
right.
Those are basically our cash returns that we have to show proof to these entities in order to get that money. So one of the things that was done the previous year was there was a article that wasn't a raise and appropriate article. Okay. And it was for 437,000, whatever. It was for the community center grant, if one was put in. That money was raised and appropriated via the select board. That we didn't need to raise and appropriate. It wasn't a raise and appropriate article. Because we publicly voted in a selectmen's meeting that we were not going to put in a grant for the community center. So why raise the money? Hindsight worked out pretty good. Because now we don't have to go pull engineer ball. We don't have to pull whatever term length with interest rate loan from a bank to pay for that public safety building in the grant. So essentially it worked out. Yeah. Now, another thing to consider too is, you know, when we budget, everybody comes in, they vote, and when I mean everybody, whoever shows up to town meeting. Okay. On average, I would say between 90 and 140 people show up out of 1,700. Okay. So that 10% and less, 8 to 10% of the population of town of Brownfield sets the rate for everybody. Okay. So I would change it. Honestly, I would change it.
More transparency.
More transparency.
Yeah.
How much more transparent can I be?
You could be more transparent by posting the meetings of the shopping guide where they are. They seem to be very difficult to access with the agenda at a time.
The website has it. And we will gladly take that under consideration. But our admin cost is gonna go up exponentially. Because if you want that advertised every week in the shopper's guide, right? It's a minimum of $46. So do that 352 weeks. So that's just adding to the admin cost. Now, another thing that needs to be, we're looking at a digital sign. So that people driving past here will see advertising. I want to stress to everybody, we are trying hard to update. We're getting a new website that will be ADA compliant, will have several pages. You know, the days of having a $1,200 website doesn't work for the taxpayers. It's too hard to navigate. We don't have any space. You know, there are things that we try to put on there. We just don't have space. You know, without exponential increasing. So we are expecting. So have accessibility.
Talking
And utilize mapping and the tax card. It's like with one person. We really are. It's hard.
So I just want to was brought in. One of the things we found is trying to get assessing data out on the website. They're pretty awful being able to do that. And I know that Alina and Lynn were working on today. One of the vendors that are prospective providers, and I've seen it used in other towns, and they can put out way more assessing data. So yeah, just the assessing angle of the bigger picture that's Rick is talking about.
I think, no, I agree with you, Rick. I think you've done an amazing job. I know how hard it was. The frustration, you know, is the assessment itself. It was poorly handled. We all feel that. And you have problems that you can look up that are unassessed that you know would sell for $150,000 more than assessed for. That leaves the rest of us subsidizing the part of the town that they haven't brought up to the standard the rest of us are on. Bring it up.
So
Get us all on the same page is all we're asking.
good question for you. Would you have preferred us to have kept all of the data that was in the system, same as it was back as we've gone through the years, and just increase the tables across everybody percent?
No.
Would that have created a more fair market within this town? So you're asking us to essentially do two different types of assessment, right? We can do a blanket market that just increases everybody 6%. That is an option.
But in order to look based on market value, when I look at a property you have assessed that I know would sell for $50,000 more than you have it assessed that, what am I supposed to think?
So,
But that property hasn't sold. That's an assertion by you. You may or may not be correct.
how
May
many
not be near what you think.
properties
don't know.
have sold $80,000 that to say that, yeah, that's a pretty house. How about we use that as part of our market analysis? We would love to, you know, but it's not the crappy houses that sell on the market, it's the good ones. And those are the ones that we have to essentially devalue.
I've been a real estate professional for 35 years. I know Tom made mistakes, but I can honestly tell you in my experience that I've looked at plenty of undervalued properties right now and give you a to the dollar price of what it will sell today, based on my professional opinion.
We appreciate that having an opinion. If you want
So I'm gonna
send
put it
it,
to you this way. You got a real estate license?
I do not.
Do you have a real estate license?
I don't.
Do you, have either of you sold houses? Do you go around and that's what you do? That's your job?
No.
Okay. Are you an assessor? Are you?
Yes, I can compare, I'm not an assessor, but I can compare analysis.
No.
And I can also provide a value to attorneys for space. As long as I say the file is only my opinion and not the opinion of the.
Have you been to the assessors? Are you certified as an assessor?
I read the whole handbook.
Are you certified as an assessor?
No.
Okay,
What's the average? It takes 3 times in order to pass that exam.
There's a 5-part test and only 20% of people pass.
so good.
Now, that's no proof of anything. There's no proof of anything. I mean, sometimes people are book smart and practicalities. I mean, that happens, and you're probably accusing me of being just that guy. Then that's fine.
Another thing would be assessing. All of the assessing that's been done has to be sent to the state. You have to be within a percentage of 70 to 110.
Right, so
So,
like we've said, assessed value, we have to divide it by market value to get essentially what we call a certified ratio, right? You divide it. We have to be within 70%.
Can I ask you said that the assessor, when the assessor does the value of a property, they take a market approach and combine it with a cost approach?
That's what adjusts the underlying tables, not that property specific. In other words, there's a cost per square foot that's in the system. And then it is applied to properties, but it's adjusted according to on average market. And then multipliers happening for size, for condition, age, depreciation, a wide variety of.
Yes.
We're supposed to test the end number against what things sell for of the whole lump together. And then when we're done with that, somebody from the state comes in and verifies what we did. And that happens every year. Monty Baker, the name of the gal was this.
But ultimately, it's fair market value.
Yes.
Ultimately,
Ultimately,
fair market value.
on average, yes.
Selling price.
Yes. Yes. Now, of course, 1,800 properties didn't sell last year. So, you know,
Now-
we had like 40 or 50 or whatever.
I think it depends on real estate professionals. I'm required to take courses. I'm required to take courses on how assessors assess property, how they come about their judgments, how they make judgments on property. I've taken all those courses. I have to take 21 credit hours every 2 years to stay up to date. So my credentials with the real estate profession, figure out fair market value on a property are pretty substantial. I just want to say.
Bill, I want everybody else to know that I don't in any way diminish his abilities or his certification. In fact, we have actually directed taxpayers to go talk to real estate brokers because we know that they're in the field too. So don't think in any way we're holding ourselves above real estate brokers because they're out there too. I mean, they're looking at properties one by one, whereas we're supposed to look at the world. So it's kind of a slightly different game, and our science actually is more inexact than is.
So at the end of the day, when you guys are doing like abatements and stuff and we're asking for more information, the reason we send you to a real estate broker is for the fact that they do know the market. You can certainly do it on your own. They are the experts. That's why we send you guys to them. It's for no other reason than that.
Also because they're sort of a neutral party. Because we were seen as representing the town. Somehow it's our benefit to do a certain thing, but no. Yes, yeah.
Basically, you're standing at stacked on there. It could go up, it could go down next year. This is
Valuations. The historical trend is always upward. There are little occasional blips, but they don't happen very often. There's talk of them cutting interest rates again, and I'll tell you, if that happens, I just believe that prices are going to take off. I don't know. The election's kind of got everybody frozen right now. We'll see after the election, New Year's how things went.
So state statute and guidelines tell us that essentially market value tells us your ability to pay. That's what state guidelines are. Doesn't necessarily mean that you can pay it, but that is the guidelines that the state wants us by. Is that what you own means that's what you guys can afford in taxes.
That's kind of an unfortunate side thing about taxes. There's 3 big taxes in the state: sales tax, income tax, property. the sales tax and the income tax are actually pretty good measures of your ability to pay, because, well, if you've got the money to buy a thing, you must have the money to pay tax. Income, oh, you made X number of dollars, well, you can pay this amount. The thing about the property tax is it's been around for thousands of years, but you can be property rich, but cash poor. And the thing is, if you don't pay your tax bill properly, you pay it with cash. So there's certain ways in which it's an antiquated way to assess people. But until that changes, of course, every state constitution in the United States has it. Until it changes. Actually, my state assessing organization, we've advocated for that they double the homestead exemption. You take some of the burden off of local property and didn't go anywhere. Who knows? I think that there's some movement in the populace to really want to see something happen on property. But nothing's happening. It's going to happen on a legislative level. And I know we're getting a little bit away from the mechanics of assessing, but I just want to get this in there. But historically, between the sales tax, income tax, and property tax, they would each carry about a third of the burden statewide. Well, now property tax is delivering over 40%. Okay, so it's pretty heavy relative to the other two. And the only way it can be changed is if the state does something, because they're the ones in control of the sales property tax. Now, my own idea, this is totally off, is that if they up the sales tax from 5.5% to 6%, and turned all that money back to the towns, we'd get some free tax. And I don't know how likely that is happening. If you see your state legislature, you can ask them, how come property tax is such a heavy burden? A little off topic, I just want to throw that. Unless individual voting people talk about this problem, nothing's gonna happen.
Veterans and homestead, there's also the veterans exemption that hasn't changed since the 70s, I think.
Yeah, that's another thing. Ever since I got right here, it was $6,000 when I started, and it's still $6,000. What's that about? They index all kinds of other things to inflation, but
Is the veterans exemption state controlled or local?
No, state. Yeah, and the blind exemption is $4,000. Imagine being blind and all you can do is reduce your valuation to $4,000. I mean, it's not much, and that hasn't changed since like the already. So.
And then of course, we also have the stabilization program last year. They got rid of, which a lot of people are seeing essentially a double increase over last year's tax bill because they're no longer at a set base rate from 2022. They're seeing 2023's tax increase along with this year's increase. I had somebody call complaining that it went up $3,700 and they were on the stabilization program. So that did have a bit of an effect on some people's tax bills.
Yeah, once the state figured out how much money they were losing, they asked on the spot.
Now they did substitute $500. They increased in your 1040 ME, so if you file Maine state tax return and you file the rent rebate program, is what they call it. They increased it from $1,500 to $2,000. That's essentially what they are using as a substitution to the stabilization.
We get some kind of timetable from the board as to how long it will take them to get the assessments done in this town.
The assessments have been done. However, we have a continuous process of error trapping, of trying, and there's an annual commitment, tax commitment, which is supposed to assess property
6 months.
Every year. So every 12 months, we're required to do a commitment. That commitment essentially sets the values of the town. We can't, after that commitment date, we're done. We're set with those numbers until we commit again the following year.
Most assessments. That's not what we said.
Until next commitment.
Well, most assessments across the state, their workload looks like this. from about April or so until about October, you're focusing on the current year. Then you've got the winter where you go, okay, what went wrong? What big projects do we have to fix? And then you spend the winter time trying to do that and try to do as much cleanup as you can, because the next April's coming, and then we're gonna have to get into doing, you know, who built new houses, who tore down the barn, who split their lots, all that
I'm just
kind of
trying
stuff.
to get the property that's already here.
And that's what I just tried to describe about what tends to happen in that sort of 5 month sector.
Okay, so the millions of dollars that are assessed to will.
And the millions of dollars that are over assessed. We've been over this multiple times tonight.
Okay,
You've
you haven't
got,
assessed that, you haven't looked at them either.
no, if you want that abatement process, all day long, bring us information. Why are you over assessed? Bring us information. Why are you under assessed? People don't like to bring in the information of why they're under assessed. Why? Because they're not paying much attention.
Not my job. Assess.
Can I say, well, in defense of you as the assessors, in the number of papers I've done over so far, there are very, unlike any properties that are assessed. That's not happening. People are not over.
We have noticed a few items within our tables that do need adjustments. One of them being depreciation on the older houses. We do know that there are factors that we thought we had calculated enough, but we did come to the realization after the commitment that we did not. And we figured that out by doing other projects in another town and using the same tables to do that. So those will be corrected for next year and so on and so forth as we keep moving forward.
It's totally.
Well, you can ask.
Just real.
So any other questions?
It's my understanding.
Except as privy, that you've been assessed.
So we are only allowed to do erroneous, how do I word this properly? Erroneous, false, overvaluation types within the 185 days of commitment. We cannot go back. So we can only go back if say you own property here, right? But you got tax assessed for it in quarter. That is when we can go back 3 years. We cannot go back any further than this current commitment.
And even then, actually, the assessors can only go back 1 year. The selectmen can go back 3 years. But it's only if it's a case like the wrong person got assessed.
So,
But most, any valuation questions, it's 185 days.
but what do you accept as proof of overvaluation?
So comparable sales, if you have a mortgage that will do that, that's why we recommend talking to a real estate broker, getting this appraiser out to the house. Those are the examples that you would provide to us showing that it's undervalued and how much it's undervalued. You have to tell us exactly what price you guys. We're not the ones that's gonna say, oh, well, I guess it's about $80,000. That's not our department. That's for you guys to decide with the information that you bring to us.
There is a site, mainelistings.com, that publishes an annual by county average increase in sale price. And I'm sorry, I don't have Oxford County in mind.
315.
What's that?
315,000.
Yeah,
It went down to 325 to 350.
yes, so,
That's the average sale now.
right. So we were seeing something that we thought, it looked like things were plateauing. And it seems on average that may be the case. The problem with an average for a county is Oxford County is in the same, border is in the same county as towns on the Canadian border. And so we try to use information like that, but we try to go outside just for general understanding of the market, but it's the kind of stuff that they have is of limited utility. They do it for the town of Cumberland County. The average sale price in Cumberland County, couldn't believe it, $580,000. Is the average sale price. Of course, that includes from Portland to Sabine and everything in between.
Is it my understanding that in order must be completed every year or.
Yes.
Am I mistaken?
Yes.
I was a-
Firstly, I believe 21-22 wrapped up. 22-23 is getting wrapped up. And then 23-24 is in progress. So once we get to the 23-24, we are caught up. I'm hoping by the end of the year,
That's
possibly with the auditing firm. And it's the same auditing firm we've had for.
I was online. I was a school event. They're online.
Yes.
Lots.
Yep, yeah, you can go to the state website and see what's been posted. Once the audit is finished, accepted, it gets sent to the state with a management letter, and then the state does their review, accepts it, and goes.
I was a school administrator for sure. I was unable legally to propose a school budget for the next year until last year's March. But the municipalities have a loophole that they can do that. Like you could have a municipal budget without having an audit.
By statute, all municipal bills will be paid. Otherwise, lien can be put against the town, and that's all town on.
But an audit doesn't, but an audit does not have to be completed before the next year's budget. In the municipality.
That was the case we already been shut down. Y'all be showing up to a town office that's locked up and changing.
Any other questions for us?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
This was the plan.
Now shut this one, you write this down?
Yeah.
You're okay, take it down. About that.